Hi, Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and here's another interview in my series of interviews with subscribers. Enjoy!
Okay.
Okay, so today my special guest is Thea Wheeless. Did I say your last name right?
Yes.
Good. Okay, I'm batting 1,000 here, so that's wonderful. All right, and Thea is a little bit different from some of my other interviews in terms of you do quilt, don't you? Yeah,
Yes.
of course, but you do so much more. And we're going to talk about all those things you do, and you definitely do historical reenactment. So we want to
Mhm.
talk a little bit about that as well. And one thing that I never asked you before is, by any chance, do you have a YouTube channel or a website?
I technically I have an account on YouTube. I don't have anything posted yet.
Okay.
I've got a Facebook group that some of our friends are on to keep up to date with things, and I occasionally remember to put things on Instagram. But when you're in the middle of doing things, it's hard to remember to film it.
It is. I know exactly how you feel about that. That's okay. I just want to make sure of that because we could talk a little bit more about that. We could talk a little bit more about your Facebook group too later on in the interview if you so desire. But let's get right into, I've said your name. Your name is Thea Wheeless. Um, I met Thea through my channel. And well, let's just talk about, get right into your making, your creative things. So you do some quilting. So have you been doing quilting for long, or how long have you been doing it?
Um, I started quilting back when I first got married and moved into the apartment with my husband that he was living in before. We got an article in the newspaper about quilts of valor and the local quilt guild, and I was like, "Ooh, I would love to learn how to quilt." So I go to the meetings and get started making those blocks, and it was surprisingly complicated, but that was years ago, and I've gotten better since then. And then I set quilting aside for a while because there's only so much time in a day
Right.
or a year, and so many other things to learn. Um, Before that, I learned knitting and crochet. And then after that, when we started on reenacting, I learned some clothing skills, tablet weaving.
So
We do woodworking and pottery and leatherworking as well.
you do it all. You do it all. So rightly so, I should call you a maker and creator because you do so many different creative things. So how were you always a creative person, always a maker? Like when you were a little child, did you love to do that kind of stuff, or was it something you discovered later in life?
Um, I taught myself how to knit from a book when I was 12.
Hmm, that's quite.
And before that, I had my Barbies and I would make things for them. Like I would tie on clothes because I didn't know how to really sew. I would take knits and stretch them when they were wet, and they actually made some really neat effects on a Barbie.
Yeah.
I don't think you could really replicate it on a human body, but it looked cool, and I was so proud of myself back then. Um,
That sounds like a very interesting technique. I have never heard anybody say that they made Barbie clothes by wetting the fabric and stretching it around it. I would think it would take on sort of the form of the doll. But
yeah, it was very slinky.
yeah, now that would be interesting to know if you could duplicate something like that on, say, like a mannequin or something, to make. I know you make costumes and things like that. Just have you ever tried that on a more of a adult level?
No, I haven't. I'm not sure whether it would work or not. I don't have a mannequin.
Right.
I think with a human body, with us being actually squishy and not hard plastic, it wouldn't work the same.
Yeah, probably not. It's just an interesting concept. I'm always into experimentation and things like that. So, did anybody in your family influence you, inspire your creative talent?
Um, Directly, not too much. My great grandmother, when I was like in kindergarten, I'd go to her house after school and she taught me the very basics of sewing with one of those plastic grid things.
Oh,
And
yes.
the yarn,
Right.
but she died when I was little and she would crochet. I've got a blanket of hers in my cedar chest. And she did blankets and curtains. And I think she may have done some self clothing sewing, but I don't know for sure.
Right.
I miss her so much. She taught herself English as
Ah,
a second language. She's Greek.
okay.
So, and then her daughter, my grandmother, knit. My mom has this beautiful sweater that she made for my mom that's got cabling and everything.
Right.
And my mom went to an art high school up in New York,
Oh,
but she didn't do anything with it because back then, I know you're old enough that you remember before computers did everything for you, having to do the math yourself.
yep.
So
For sure.
she wasn't good enough at math to actually be an architect like she wanted to, but she's done some beautiful drawings.
Okay, so really your talent does not come from any place strange. You have a history. It's in your genes with
Mhm.
that. So let's talk about creations. Do you have a favorite creation? And if so, why is it your favorite? I know that's kind of a difficult question because if you're anything like me and other creators, our favorite creation is that which we have just done.
Yeah. Um,
Hard to pick.
it is.
It's like
I
picking
love
a
so
child.
many of the things I've made, and most of my favorite ones I'm still actually working on.
Right. And so why
So
why are those things your favorites right now that you're working on? What is it that makes them something you just you want to finish, you want it, you're inspired by it as you work on it kind of thing. Keeps your mojo going.
I try and improve on my skills as I keep on going. And some of the things I'm working on are my more elaborate patterns that I've had in my head of I want to do this for a while. And I'm actually going to make myself finish the darn things finally.
Yeah. Okay. So oftentimes some of our things that we're most attracted to are the ones that are the most challenging as well. And I think that's because it keeps our brains going, right? And not for you so much because you're not in my age group, but in my age, you got to keep your brain going. So yeah, the creative things help with that a great deal. So as a creator, how would you describe yourself? Are you more drawn to traditional techniques or styles, or are you more modern, or are you kind of experimental or free form?
I think a mix of experimental and traditional
Okay,
because I typically, if I'm going to quilt something myself rather than send it to a long armor, it's gonna have to be by hand because
right.
I've tried using the domestic machine to quilt with, and it's just such a pain.
Yes, it is.
And I don't have space for a long arm. Um, Up until recently, when my friend let me borrow her machine, I just had my Singer featherweight, so I wasn't able to do zigzag stitch. So when I want applique done, that's needle turn.
Yeah. Okay, so do you
So
enjoy hand sewing?
I feel very satisfied by having sewing come out well, but I also kind of hate how long it takes.
Yes, yes. I'm not good with a needle and thread. I'm more into bloodletting when it comes to that kind of thing for me. But yeah, so well, I know that I've seen you working on some of your pieces, and you do seem though to be very skilled at doing the hand sewing and that. And I guess that comes from practice as
Yeah.
well. Maybe I'd get
Well,
better if I practiced, but I'm not interested.
you don't have to.
Yeah,
But for reenactment purposes, up until like Civil War era, they didn't actually really have sewing machines the way we think of. They
right.
were starting to come into use before that, like 1800, I want to say.
Yeah.
But if you're doing Renaissance or medieval, there were no sewing machines.
No.
So I can use it for the big seams that are hidden and then hand finish everything. And it looks like I sewed it all by
Yeah.
hand.
So it makes
But
actually what you've created more authentic.
obvious machine stitches kind of ruin the immersion of this came out of history.
Yeah, yeah, true. Um, And I want to come back, and I do want to talk a little bit more a little later on about the whole reenactment and the historical piece in there, because I know you're very much involved with that. But before we do that, do you have an area in your home that you use exclusively for creating, or do you just do it anywhere?
Um, Technically, we have a garage for woodworking,
Oh, okay.
and we have a shed that was used for a side hustle doing some plaster molding,
Mm,
but that's going to become a pottery studio eventually.
okay.
But for sewing, it's just this couch.
Well, I guess when you're doing a lot of hand sewing, you don't really need a special area for it, because you can do it wherever you are,
Yeah.
which makes it very portable as well. So do you have, speaking of, hand sewing and other things in the woodworking, do you have any favorite tools or techniques that you go to time and time again that you really enjoy?
One thing I like for doing applique, especially fancy designs, is you take the pattern and you have it inverted on the back of your fabric, like the background piece,
Okay.
and you go over it with a big piece that encompasses everything you need for the top fabric. Like here, this is almost done,
Ah, okay.
but I went over with my sewing machine along all of the different leaves to hold everything in place as one big piece.
Right.
And then I just clip around the excess fabric, unpick the machine stitching, and sew it down. It holds everything where I need it to keep it in the proper shape, no matter how complex it is, without me fighting with pins or basting stitches.
Right. Is that what they refer to as reverse applique?
I think I thought reverse applique was where you cut away parts, like
Oh,
I'm gonna have
yes.
to do for the center.
Right.
But this tree of life design I did,
That's beautiful.
I just went through with the paper and a light box and traced it on the background fabric, and then sewed. It took a while, but I used my featherweight to sew all along all of those lines with my machine. And then I didn't have to worry about fiddly little
Mm,
lines.
right. Now, I noticed in that piece, can you show us that piece again? Um, because it's a fascinating piece. And I noticed now, is that quilting you've got in the background?
Yes, I'm making progress on quilting it.
Is that hand done?
Yes.
Wow, that is intricate work. And so what's your plan for that final piece when you get it done? Is it
Oh,
going,
it's gonna go right back here.
oh, okay, so it's a wall hanging.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's mine.
Oh, it's your, yeah. Well, I would think, because that looks like hours and hours and hours of work and detail. So yeah, that's something that you want to hang on to for sure. It's
I've
beautiful.
brought it to events and sewn on it like for pirate because it's the right time period for
Oh, right.
that. And had people go, "Ooh, is that for sale?" I'm like, "You couldn't afford it."
Yeah, exactly. No, they couldn't for sure. So, speaking of selling things and money, if you had all the money in the world, is there a piece of equipment or something that you would invest in?
I would get a bigger house
Mhm.
and fix this one up so I could rent it out or sell it because it needs some repairs. And in that bigger house, I would have a sewing room with a long arm machine
Yep, yep. That sounds like a plan with that for sure. And
and nice organized shelving so I could have everything neat and where I could see it and not go, "Oh yeah, I remember buying that fabric."
yeah, that's true. If it's something is out of sight, it's out of mind. I found that too when I was in a different area of my house with my sewing room. I didn't have a lot of space, so I put everything in baskets. And then I didn't know what I had. So now I have them on open shelves, all my fabric, because then I can shop my stash and I know what I've got. So I'm not duplicating,
Hmm.
when I purchases, or, like when you look through your stuff, you get inspired too. Sometimes you go, oh yeah,
Oh
I
yeah.
bought that. I should use that. So have you ever, now I know the answer to this, because this fits in with your reenactment things that you do. Have you ever belonged to an in-person group or design team or an online group or something that's related to all the things you do?
I'm in a couple of reenactment groups, and I also used to be part of the Tidewater Quilters Guild.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the reenactment, because I actually have neighbors that are into reenactment too. I'm not actually, I don't
Really
know many of the details, what kind they do. I think it might be medieval kind of thing, because I think I've seen them with a little bit of chainmail
nice.
around. But tell me more about the reenactment that you do, like what it is, how you got involved in it.
Okay. I'm in two groups currently. Technically, I'm sort of in a third for pirate, but that's more whenever I feel like it and they've got something in the area than actual hard and fast membership.
Right.
The first group I joined is the Kingdom of Cornucopia and their 13th century Spain group, because that time period was a big period for inclusion in the area because the Moors had just kind of relinquished control of the area, and Jews, Christians, and Muslims were all living in peace together. People were coming from all over to trade. So in Cornucopia, you can be from any background you want to.
Right.
So I'm able to do my Viking clothing and fit in because the Norse were still coming and trading. It was late Viking by that era, but they're not
So
super strict.
So do you then sort of specialize in Viking reenactment?
Well, how we got involved with Cornucopia is we moved into this house and got the garage that's detached and almost as big as our entire house. My husband has been a tree climber since I met him. And with the house and the garage, we were able to start bringing wood home from when he has to cut trees down at work and make things. And we met Cornucopia at a show we went to. It's called Harvest Fair. It used to be in October, and I was all dressed up. I found the event. I had a bridesmaid's dress from my friend who was a nerd, and it was kind of medieval looking. And it was just like, this is fun. I want to do this. And then Cornucopia is like, hey, don't I know you? Because it turns out Anthony had actually met them prior to that years ago, and they lost his contact information. He thought they just didn't want him around.
Mm.
So we got started and we met a Viking group when we were trying to get clothing that was actually appropriate and got involved in that too. And it's just like, oh yeah, this is kind of cool. Because cornucopia is not strict on historical accuracy,
Mm.
but the Viking group was. So we're not in that group anymore. We're in a different Viking group because politics. But anyway, having a specific time period and knowing this is accurate, this is not, and we might choose to do the this is not anyway, but we know is kind of nice because I
Yeah.
didn't care about history in high school.
I was just going to ask you, did you like history? Because I would think that, this would be right up anybody's alley that loves history.
The thing is, I like this sort of history. I like knowing how people lived their lives, what they ate, how do you survive before modern technology?
Right.
But they don't teach that in the schools around here. They
Oh,
teach
true.
list of battles you need to know for the SATs and important white men's names.
Hmm. So they're teaching more political history than the social history. I
Yeah.
always found the social history much more interesting than the political
Yeah,
history.
I don't care about some pompous man who decides to go and invade someone.
Yeah,
He
true.
shouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
Even
true.
though it does affect history and what happens, because we have the calendar we have today because of Julius Caesar.
Right.
The space shuttle's dimensions are based off of a Roman horse's rear.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
Well, because the road width was based off of a Roman chariot, and that
Right.
got transposed over here into railroad widths. And the space shuttle components had to be transported by rail, so they had to fit on that.
Ah, okay then. Now that is something that's really interesting, and I did not know that. That is fascinating.
I didn't put that together myself, but my husband did. And it's just
Oh
like,
yeah.
your brain works in the weirdest ways, but I love you.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the reenactments is definitely something it does sound like a lot of fun. Now, how often do you get involved with like events, reenactment events? Do they happen a lot, or are they once or twice a year, or
The big events where it's public and I'm being seen and I've got to have my kit all on display are about 3 or 4 times a year.
Hmm,
And the groups tend to meet like monthly if they can, to just get together and hang out and be a community.
right? And so I would assume at those meetings they probably share ideas for upcoming events, things they're going to create, and that kind of thing. So they'd be sort of like a guild where you get some inspiration and
Yeah,
things.
there's that aspect, but usually there's always food,
Mm.
and you always end up having leftovers to bring home, and usually there's some sort of sharp object flying through the air. Either archery or knife throwing or axe throwing or spear throwing or all of the above.
Okay, sounds like a dangerous thing too.
No, because
Well,
everyone knows this is the area of the
oh,
field
okay.
where we're doing this. You stay clear. If you're throwing, you keep an eye out and make sure no one's being stupid and getting in the path.
Yeah.
It's very cathartic sometimes because you
Yeah.
have a rough day and then you go the next week and it's just like,
Yeah, you wouldn't want to be eating something and casually walk into the middle of this and come home with your head under your arm. Yeah,
no.
kind of a thing. Well, it sounds very fascinating and fun. I have never been. Do they allow like just
Oh
civilians
yeah,
to come in and watch what's
you
going
can
on?
watch. Yeah, if you were wanting to do the combat, that's a bit trickier. Like
Right.
usually at an event, if you're going to be participating, there's like kind of a waiver you have to sign because
Mm, yes, I could see
obviously no
that.
one wants to get sued.
Yep. Yep.
Um, at events, I'm usually cooking for my group, but well, not cornucopia because the queen cooks for the group there. But for the
Okay.
Viking group, I do the cooking, and I'm not allowed to share it with random strangers
Uh,
because liability.
oh,
Which
right,
is
right.
it's really a shame for them because I make great food.
I was going to say, what kind of food do you cook at something like this? Like, is it authentic historically to the time period, or is it kind of an
I can
adaptation?
I can do authentic, but a lot of ingredients we take for granted and love today wouldn't have been available in medieval Europe,
Right.
like potatoes, tomatoes, bell peppers, corn,
Hmm.
chocolate, coffee.
Okay.
Um,
Well, that sounds boring then for the food. So what
some of
would
my
be a
favorite
typical?
foods are North American.
Oh yeah. What would be a typical dish that you might present at one of these events?
Usually, I bake beforehand and I bring seed cakes.
Hmm.
And I will have some sort of stew on probably, or I'll use the grill grate and grill some meat.
So are you
Um,
doing this on an open fire then?
yeah,
Okay. So wow, this is a lot involved in these reenactments that I did not realize. I'm sorry, I don't want to insult anybody, but
no, it's
I hear
fine.
the word reenactment, I just see a bunch of people running around in costumes, but there's so much more, obviously.
It can boil down to just running around in costumes,
Yeah,
but it's nice learning how to cook over a fire. It's kind of challenging because
yeah,
obviously I'm used to a modern stove where I can just turn a dial and it regulates the temperature precisely. And it's like,
yeah,
this is easy. On a fire, it's like, wait, the fire's going down. Let me go and get another piece of wood, or
yeah,
adjusting where the coals are laying so things stay a
right.
certain temperature relative to it.
So in a sense, all of these things are they're all creative to do them. You learn things and techniques, but it does take a lot of imagination as well to think, like you say, you just can't go over and turn on a dial, you know
No.
which is
Uh, and the most common question we get asked when we're at events is that a real fire? I'm like,
oh, you're kidding. What did
I
they
am
think?
not kidding. I have a story from someone shared from a different group where someone was nursing their baby and got asked if that was a real baby. And it's like, are you kidding me? What do you think? I've got a doll held up to my boob?
Yeah, really. Well, I guess you see, but that's the thing. I guess people, don't really understand what it is until they've actually gone and experienced it. So, like I said, I just thought you run around in a costume, but there's so much more. Definitely, we don't have any in this area that I live in.
I know there's a branch of the SCA up in Canada, but I don't know the details because I'm not in an SCA group.
I mean, I think there may be some reenactments that are done in Toronto area in that, but I've never been to one. But I'm thinking now maybe I would like to go to one and just observe to see what all this is about. It
It's
sounds
definitely an
interesting.
experience.
Yeah, for sure. And I have an interest in history as well, so this would appeal to that part of me too. So, with all of this that you're doing,
Mhm.
making these costumes and your quilting and everything else, where do you go to get your supplies and materials?
Okay. For my tablet weaving supplies, I have a friend who is a vendor that I met at a fair, and she sells linen thread, which is what I use for card weaving. And I've got a couple of things strung up right now.
Oh, wow.
Uh, but I get all of my linen thread from her because why not support small business?
Exactly.
For my linen fabric, I go to fabrics-store.com, and they actually have a promo code for 7% off. It's I love linen, all underscore or one word, lowercase.
Okay, great. That's good information for the viewers.
I do not recommend making a quilt out of linen unless you're using very big pieces because I
Yeah.
tried that with smaller pieces and they shift so much. It's just like, I'm going to rip my hair out or burn this thing.
Yeah. So,
But for large pieces, like for clothing, it's
right
so comfortable.
now you were talking about card weaving. Can you describe what card weaving is?
I can show you.
Great.
All right.
Wow, that's
So
some kind of tool there.
this is the frame my husband built me. He built me a actual floor model, like the actual archaeological find, but this one works well for sitting on my lap when I'm anywhere, basically. It's more portable. But we've got this is already woven band,
Oh, wow.
and this is warp that hasn't been woven, and this is my weft thread. And these cards are there's see these 4 holes?
Yes.
Each card has 4 holes and a thread passed through each of them. And when you're weaving, you pass the weft through and then you turn the cards and then you pass the weft through again. And when you turn it, one thread goes down, another thread goes up, and the other two shift position, waiting for their turn to get down or up again. And it makes a new shed, as they call it, every time you turn the cards.
And
And by
can we
doing
see the
so, you get
yeah.
your band.
Can we see that again? The top, the finished part? It's up there. That is
That's the back
extremely
side. That
wow. That is really intricate. Now, does that take like that piece you have on there? How long would that take you to make something that length?
just the length I have finished,
Yeah.
not that long. I
No?
think I worked on this for a couple of hours at an event last time.
Oh, okay. I thought it would because it looks so intricate that it would probably take a lot longer than that.
This pattern is actually really simple to work on. And this one's even simpler. This
Oh,
is
okay.
actually a variation on a band they found, the Oseberg Narrow Band. I put my own twist on it with the border cards.
Right.
But that one, you just keep going until the twist builds up too much, and then you go the other way to untwist it. And it's super easy. The diamonds, you turn a certain number, and then you turn back the same number to form the diamond patterns.
Now, I have never seen that before. This is the first time I've ever become aware of such a creative outlet. But how did you learn that? Are you self-taught? Did you take a class? YouTube?
I learned about the existence of card weaving when I joined the Viking group I first started in, because that's one of their textile skills.
Right.
And I wanted something to do at events aside from helping with cooking.
Yeah.
And
And you just learned it from them then, from people who had already done it.
well, no one in the group really did it much. So there's a lot of resources online.
Okay, that's good. So you can just go there and learn how to do it. I'm fascinated by weaving. It's not something
There's
I've ever done,
uh,
but
there's a YouTuber who has a bunch of videos. Let me see if I can find her name. I think it's like Yield with the Red or something.
oh, okay. Well, we don't have to worry so much about that right now. People can probably look that up for themselves
Okay.
if they've got an interest in it. But yeah, that's it looks so intricate. That's what I know. I've seen some of your work before we did this interview too, so I was aware of that. But I find that really fascinating. So that might be something I might look into a little bit further. Like I need another hobby, but but
I
new
mean,
things are good.
it can be fun and it can be really straightforward. Like you can do two color lanyards and actually write words just by how you've got cards turned up and down. I haven't tried that yet because I don't have much point to it. But
And how did your husband figure out how to make the apparatus, the tool that you're using for this?
um, he looked at a picture.
And he just did it from that.
He doesn't consider himself to be a smart man, but I think he's just beating himself up too much because he didn't go to college. Because he's so talented at figuring things out on his own, and that's a gift.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I look at that and there's no way I would ever figure out how to do something like that or make it. So, yeah, I think your husband's got a real talent there too, as you have said. We should have interviewed him too uh, with this, maybe in the future. So, moving on then. So, I've already kind of talked a little bit about this, and you have too, but are there any sources of information that you go to time and time again, or do you just do a general search when you find something you're interested in to learn more about it?
There are some specific websites I have bookmarked for like card weaving patterns, or if I'm doing a historical quilt, I've got books with patterns, or for clothing, there's various sources.
Right.
Most of my reenactor friends have a lot of actual physical books that I can borrow if I need to, which is nice.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of what we end up doing is sort of experimental archaeology, where we take what we know and expound on it to the parts that it's kind of missing.
Oh, okay. So really, there's a whole level here of research and intellectual for lack of a better term, development here. It's not just, oh, I saw a picture, I'm going to put this thing together. It's the whole background that makes it, I think, a little bit more authentic because, like you're telling me about the reason why the space shuttle is designed the way it is. Well, that comes from research. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that makes this really even more interesting because not only are you having fun and being creative, but you're learning too, which is, I think coming from a teaching background, that's a good combination, I think. So, if do you have any challenges or goals in the future in terms of like projects you might want to attempt?
Um, yes. Currently, we've got one big project in the works that hopefully is going to get finished by winter. Um, we've got a piece of land 2 hours west of here. It's a big piece of land. We're going to turn it into a reenactors playground over the next decade.
Oh, gee.
Well, decade might be ambitious. We'll see. But the cottage, we built it from the ground up, digging the posts by hand and setting the frame and building the walls with historical methods.
Mm.
And it's been an adventure, but we're going to be putting the shingles on for the roof soon. It's lasted this long with just a tarp, but that'll be nice.
That sounds really ambitious and I'm sure very, very interesting as well to do that and creating it historically like accurate and that kind of thing. That's got to be a real challenge because you said earlier, there are things that we have today they did not have then. So
Well, we are kind of cheating. Like, we've got a tractor and we've been using that for hauling things because they would have used like a horse and cart probably, or an ox and cart. and we're not keeping animals out
Well,
there.
no.
We only go out there every weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the tractor is our horse. And we've got drills with battery packs
Right.
rather than hand drilling, because why would we bother hand drilling if
When
we
you,
don't have to?
yeah,
Um,
the people of that time period, if they had access to this
oh
stuff,
yeah,
I'm sure they would have used it. So,
oh absolutely. If I were able to go back a 1,000 years and hand a Viking lady a treadle sewing machine, she would use the
oh
heck
yeah,
out of that.
I'm sure. I'm sure. And funny that, just as an aside here, there's a lot of people when in the sewing industry and that in the quilting especially, they say you're cheating when you're using like a long arm with a computer on it, like I do, or computerized embroidery and that kind of stuff. And
They're
that,
jealous.
yeah, yeah. Well, basically, I don't think it's cheating. It's using what you have in your time period. You're using
Right.
the technology of the day to create your art. So I don't see anything wrong with that at all. But
It does make things a lot easier having the computer guide the machine for
yeah,
you, but even having the long arm on its own is really a lot easier than hand quilting everything.
well,
So
yeah,
where are you going to stop drawing the line for this technology is okay and this technology isn't?
yeah. Well, we all have stoves in our house now, and I don't think a lot of people would say, "Oh, I'm not going to use a stove. I'm going out to cook on an open fire for every day," kind of a thing. I don't think too many people are into
No,
that.
not
So
even me.
no, I mean, it's fun to do, at certain times and things like that. But for everyday use, no, we've got the technology. Let's use it.
Or
So,
microwaves even.
yeah, true. Like all these things. Yeah. So, how would you describe yourself as an artist? Because you are an artist in your creations.
Yeah.
Like, it sort of piggybacks on the question I asked earlier about the kind of quilter and that, but would you consider yourself uh, a really free thinker as an artist, experimental, exploratory, or do you take what's already there and maybe just put your own spin on it? Or
Mostly take already existing concepts and put my own spin on it, because most of my work lately has been as a reenactor, and you don't want to be completely original when
yeah,
you're trying to portray a historical time period, because that's disingenuous. Like,
yeah,
then people are going to come and see what you've got on your clothing or whatever and go, oh, they had that pattern back then.
yeah,
I don't like misinforming people.
yeah, true, true. So the
um
keeping to
but
the authenticity.
for quilting, my big thing that I love is elaborate applique.
Mm,
So I guess that's kind of traditional, but I'm not using pre-existing patterns. I'm kind of drafting them myself. So
yourself.
I guess it's putting my own spin on an original
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. And I think that's all part of the creative process too. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Some people don't want to deviate from the plan, it's already there. I think that's just fear. You have to be fearless when you're an artist.
Following someone else's pattern to the T is good when you're starting, because then you know it's going to come out looking like a good complete piece.
Exactly.
But once you know the basics, why?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
really.
like that's like following someone's plot template to write a book.
Yeah,
It's not going to be interesting.
true.
Well,
So,
it's
yeah.
not fair to say that,
Well,
because if you have your own like fabric choices, you can get so many different combinations with the same block. But
true, true.
it's not for me.
It's no, it's whatever the individual gets the most joy out of. So yeah, true. So you don't have a YouTube channel, but you do have a Facebook group. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the Facebook group? Is
Um,
anybody welcome to that group, or is it a very private group and there's certain things you have to do to get in?
the Facebook group is a private group so far for our friends who have shown interest in the property, so they
Oh,
can get updates without it being just publicly on the public Facebook feed.
right.
Because my husband doesn't want it to be advertised on general Facebook feed that we're going to be out of town for a week
Uh,
working on the property, because
yes.
who knows who's going to see that and go, oh, I know where they live.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. With it. So right now it's just for basically family and friends
Mhm.
and that kind of.
Eventually, when we get the property built up more, we're probably going to end up putting together a crowdsourcing page where people can express interest in coming out and like donate a couple of dollars to have their name carved on a pillar someplace or things like that.
Right. Well, it sounds like that sounds like a very interesting long-term goal within which is an extension of your interests already. So yeah, great. I hope that all works out for you. Thea has some pictures she wants to show us of I'm assuming of reenactments you've been at and things like that. And so this is the first one up on your screen. And what are we seeing here besides yourself and a horse?
This is, well, her name is Hell's Bells. She's a horse of a friend of mine. The outfit that I'm wearing here is, aside from the boots, something that my husband and I made ourselves, leather work and metal work included. I've got my spear and I'm got a shield on my back, and on her back is my husband's cloak because she needed something on her back.
Hmm.
Um, this is my Shield Maiden of Rohan outfit, just for fun, because we don't actually have a group that we do like Lord of the Rings with. There's one in Kentucky that we might drive out to at some point.
Right.
But this is our tent all set up. Um, I sewed this tent out of heavyweight linen and then we waterproofed it.
Oh
He
wow.
built the frame, he built the bed. On the bed there is my summer weight linen apron dress and dress. That's my floor loom right there.
Hmm.
And he built the table and the chests right there. And the bench over there by the cauldron is where I'm cooking some food.
So when you go to one of these events, are you there overnight as well? So you sleep in the tent?
Ideally, if it's just going to be a 1 day event, we don't usually bring the tent because it's an awful lot of work setting it up.
Yeah, I would think so. Okay, and what's next? Okay.
That's the food I was cooking.
Oh, that looks kind of tasty. So what's in there? Carrots, I notice, and
Yeah, I usually use baby carrots because it saves time on cutting them up.
hmm,
And then that looks like it's a head of Napa cabbage.
hmm,
And there'll be some chopped up beef in there too, because I'm not a vegetarian.
okay.
And probably onion, and basically you can make a soup out of whatever.
There you
And
got.
it's more or less historically accurate if they have the ingredients.
Yeah.
Because
And
that's what they did.
what about seasoning? If like, would there be much seasoning from that time
Um,
period?
they had salt and black pepper. Salt was a very valued commodity. You actually have your wages paid in salt. Because it was so necessary for preserving food back then. They had mustard grain. I used to have this down pat for events, but with COVID, I've forgotten most of my prepared lectures. They had dill and fennel and other herbs to add to their food. Onions, garlic. It
So what?
wasn't bland food.
Okay. So what would you in this dish that you've got the picture of? What would you be using for seasoning then in that?
That one definitely has salt and pepper, and it definitely has onion. I think I also put cumin and what is it, turmeric in there because I like using those when I can because they're good for you.
Right. Yeah. Actually looks very tasty. And what is this that we're seeing? Barbie.
This is Viking Barbie.
And is this a little miniature display
Yes,
sort of thing that you've
my
created?
husband made all of the non-clothing things on here, and
Oh
the
wow.
backdrop here is the castle we made for our cats, but we don't have an actual structure for her yet. So
Okay. Well, that's that the attention to detail in your husband's woodworking for this, because I'm assuming, well, yeah, Barbie shows you how big these things are, so
mhm.
he's working in miniature with this.
It's he'll surprise me. He'll go out to the garage for a while and then come in and just say, close your eyes and hold out your hands. And I do, and he hands me a new miniature, and it's just like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
It's not in the picture, but he made her own little knife.
Oh,
with an actual sharp metal blade and a leather sheath and everything. And it's
wow.
only that big.
Well, I'm looking at the little goblet that's by her hand there, and that
Yeah,
is like tiny, tiny, tiny.
he turned the goblet and the plate and bowl. He hand carved the spoons. This actual little, this is a replica of a firebox that
Hmm.
we see people using at events. We actually had a fire lit in there at some point for a picture.
Hard to
So
get close, she melts.
it was just a tiny fire,
Yeah, just
but the firebox actually held up for it, which is like, yay. He did the forging work for making the cauldron, which was a pain, he says,
oh
and
wow.
making the S hooks himself with the nice little twists like the big ones have,
Yeah.
and the hinges, and it's just like, he spoils me.
Yeah, that well, he's an incredible artist, really. That is not easy stuff to do, I'm sure of that.
I sewed her clothing, and that was tricky
Yeah.
because some of it just got sewed onto her, and I don't think it's actually coming off anymore. And it was tiny fiddly bits, but she's going to get her own little loom and cards
Mm.
eventually.
Well, that in itself is something that's just um another extension, but in itself it's a separate kind of event, like miniature recreations, you know. Those
Yeah.
are very popular, I know, but I wouldn't have the patience. So now what are we looking at? This is one of your bands.
This is one of the first bands I made for myself. I made it to go with this braided trim that's
Oh,
on my, this was my first apron dress that was given to me as my kit joining the Viking group I was with.
right.
And I wanted a belt that matched it because I like color coordination for my clothing.
Yeah.
But that's me wearing that dress and the leather belt he made me and the belt pouch working on some tablet weaving. See,
Wow.
this is the problem with the floor model because I have to throw my legs over this bar to sit comfortably and not like stretch my back out
Right.
when I'm working on things.
Yeah, I could see how that would be a bit cramped, cramp you up a little bit after a few hours.
And then if you've got to tend to the fire and cook, you've got to be constantly
Mm.
lifting your legs back up over the bar. And it's just a hassle. So he made me that little one.
Right. And is that the little one? Do you take that one with you with the reenactments?
I do. He was like, I didn't intend for you to take that with you. I'm like, too bad. I'm doing it. I like it.
Yeah. And what else do we have here?
That's our
Oh, that's
tent.
the tent.
When we first started working on waterproofing it, we had it set up in the backyard. This is a tire hung on a string, and it's got that pole running through it. We use that for combat practice
Oh,
because when you hit it, it'll start swinging and kind of, and you have to dodge the poles hitting you back.
how are
It's
your
not
neighbors?
perfect, but
Right. How
it's
are your
better.
neighbors with all this? If you're in the backyard doing target practice and that kind of thing, do they think you're like, okay, we should move?
No, I don't think so. The neighbor this way has been there since before we have, and she probably thinks we're weird, but we're not particularly noisy,
Yeah.
and we don't get into screaming fights, and we haven't caused her any property damage, so she's just kind of chill with it.
Jesus. Oh,
And the other neighbors have changed hands a couple of times, but no one said anything to
no.
us. So.
Well, that's good. Well, that's a
And
great shot.
that's my husband at the beach right when a storm was coming through. We like going and being out in weather because we're weird and stupid. Um,
That's
but
a
it
great
makes for
picture.
kind of an epic picture.
Yeah, I was going to say that looks very, very authentic.
Except for the shoes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well,
So,
period authentic shoes don't have grip the way modern shoes do.
right.
There's no treads
Yeah,
and there's no arch support. So we save those for actual events where it matters.
yeah, yeah. I can see that. Yeah,
That's me taking a test in my kit because if you have it, why not wear it?
true. True.
That's one of my quilts, and
And you have a kitty.
I have two kitties. That's one of them. This quilt, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but I made a baby quilt that goes along with it with the same fabrics.
Mm.
So I'm hoping that one of my friends is going to tell me that they're pregnant and they plan on having a large family. So I can say,
Oh,
okay, we can embroider the baby's name on one of these apples
right.
and your names, and you can have this quilt, and I'll get it out of my house.
Yeah. Of course, the cat may want to possess it, and there's your other cat, and of course, cats love quilts.
They do.
They go with that. Yeah.
This is my this is the first quilt that I made for myself. Anthony actually designed the block. It
Oh,
turns out it's a variation on the pattern called mosaic, but he was just playing around with paint and came up with something he liked. And so I took the fabric and I made it for us as kind of a anniversary present.
yeah. Well, it's great, and the cat loves it too, as we can see.
Yeah, he loves it so much he's thrown up on it a few
Now,
times.
what is this that we're looking at? This looks
This
intricate.
is a clay bas relief kind of thing. Actually, when it was finished, it went all the way through, and it was just kind of an open fretwork. I
Right.
made that after my ceramics class for college, and it's ivy vines with a window, and there's a couple of butterflies in there. I don't have a picture of it finished because unfortunately it was in the kiln with another piece that exploded,
Oh,
and because it was fretwork, it kind of got destroyed.
oh, geez, that's a shame because it's beautiful.
See, is there more? There is more. It was just the other way.
Okay.
And are you seeing the picture?
Nope, I'm still seeing your clay.
Okay, so new share is that. Okay.
Ah, there we go. Well, those are colorful.
This is the picture that you shared in your submission.
Yes.
So this is that belt I made myself.
Yeah.
This was a graduation present I gave to a friend of his from school. And these two bands here, the vine pattern and the diamonds, I actually have saved to go on a very special outfit that I'm sort of working
Yeah.
on. Cornucopia had this Masters Challenge where you're making the entire outfit historically accurate construction
Mm.
from the skin out, including shoes and stockings.
Oh,
But everyone who is participating in it hasn't finished it, and it started 2 years ago.
well,
So
a lot of
yeah,
work.
COVID was part of that, but
Yeah.
at least I'm not the only one who didn't finish the challenge.
Yeah, you're not alone. And what is this? It looks like a shield kind of thing.
This is a very large serving platter I made in
Oh,
ceramics class. We
oh,
were required to make a, like, you know, those plates that you can buy commemorating things?
yes.
We were required to make something like that. So I made that platter as my submission for that assignment because I don't want to plate. But I made it really big, and cornucopia is actually two kingdoms combined, cornucopia and alaria.
Mm.
And alaria's symbol is this phoenix. So I put the shields on there, and I did the nice vine pattern around the outside. And once it was finished, I submitted it to the court as a present, and I don't have to store it.
Ah, okay. Well, that works out well too. But that's really gorgeous.
Yeah, it hasn't been used in an event yet, but I just submitted it earlier this year. So I'm thinking probably it will be on display for 12th night
Oh,
because that's
okay.
our big end of the year feast where
Oh,
all the
all
nice
right.
stuff comes out.
And that's in December, isn't it? 12th night?
January.
January.
It's
Okay.
January 6th, I think, right? 12 days after the 25th of
Oh,
December.
right, right.
And this
That's
is
really intricate.
one of my favorite things I've made. It's a three-dimensional clay sculpture. I gave it to my mom for Mother's Day a couple of years ago. The purple all turned out darker than I expected because I tried to mix the clay pigments myself,
Right.
but I didn't realize how dark it would be when it fired.
It's still though, that if you didn't mention that, who would know? I mean, it's gorgeous just as it is.
My mom likes it. These cups have since broken off of the daffodils because she has this big Maine Coon cat that likes to go wherever he wants,
Oh,
and
okay.
so he's knocked the piece over.
Yeah,
But the rest of it's intact, which I'm pretty pleased with because
that's
it's
good.
just clay.
Yeah, yeah,
And then let me see. Not that one. I guess that's the last one on
that's
this
the last one.
set. I've got more on a different folder. And of course, it's all mixed in.
Yeah. Well, what we could do is maybe you could send me some more of those pictures and I could put them into one of my Idiot Quilter episodes as well to show.
Well,
Because I don't want this interview to go too much longer because I don't want to lose the audience if they, because some
okay.
people can't watch things for much longer than 45 minutes.
Okay.
But
Just a couple of the property then.
oh, this is one. This is great. Yeah. So this is part of your property then?
Yeah, this is sunset in the winter time. My husband caught a good picture of me from behind looking at the sunset. Um, I've got my hood on and my caftan that I sewed, and then my winter dresses underneath that. And of course, modern shoes and some nice thick socks. It
Yeah.
was not quite freezing, but it
Oh,
was,
so you were warm?
yes.
Here's it.
And that's me from the front in front of the cottage door with a nice warm mug of tea in my hands.
Yeah. The pictures are so authentic looking, like you'd almost think, if someone had a camera in that time period, this is exactly what it would look like.
Probably.
Yeah.
This is me using that frame to do some weaving inside the cottage.
Hmm.
This is one of the construction pictures from the cottage.
Oh, wow.
If you see right here, there's mud up, but on this side of the wall, there's not.
Hmm.
This is called wattle and daub construction. The wattle is this framework of reeds, and then the daub is the mud that goes over top of it.
Hmm.
And it was completely intrinsic to medieval construction, all the way up through, I want to say the 17th, 18th century. You'll even find some colonial buildings with it. Just slightly different framework for the actual building supports.
Right. And your husband?
This is his shot, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is
That's
in the summertime, earlier into the construction when we haven't even finished building the walls up yet.
wow. That is so, oh, there you go. Now you got the walls built up.
The walls are all built in this one, and there's snow. And we were so glad to find out that tarp could hold up under snow because we were
Yeah.
worried.
Yeah.
Um,
All that work you put into it, you hate to have nature destroy it.
Fortunately, I've got other things. This is a nice picture I saved from my area. There's a place called the Hermitage in Norfolk, and they've got this beautiful wisteria and a brick arch and this old-fashioned looking like architecture in there. So we go there for photo shoots sometimes. That's another in progress shot. You can see we've got a transition from the bamboo to uh, more hardwood
Right.
for the wicker. We weren't 100% sure on where we were going to stop with the daub and have the stuff actually show. We didn't want bamboo showing
No,
because they didn't have bamboo in medieval Europe.
that's a nice shot.
This is one of the pictures my husband's took in the evening. Um, our friend gave us these hanging lanterns, and then we've got the candles, so it's nice ambient light.
Yeah, really. It's very nice.
And that is what it was like when we first started after we got the frame built.
Wow. A lot of work. A lot of work.
Yes.
The door.
Oh, I went too far there.
Oh, that's a great shot too.
That was, we were supposed to have people come meet us, but no one came.
No.
So Anthony was like, I'm gonna take a picture of you grilling those steaks and they're gonna see what they missed out on.
Yep. Yep. Looks great.
So in addition to the steaks, we've also got potatoes wrapped in foil in the coals, kind of roasting.
Yep.
And that dinner was delicious.
I would think it would be. Yes.
Sure.
So that's great. Thank you for sharing those pictures. That really gives us a better sense of what the reenactment's all about and everything there. So, so do you have any advice for anyone who might want to get started in any of these? You're weaving into quilting, into reenactment, anything that you would recommend to them for somebody who's a complete novice?
Um, find some people in your area who do the thing and make friends with them, because everyone who's into this sort of hobby, whether it's quilting or reenactment or anything, wants to geek out about their favorite thing and make new friends who are also geeking out about that favorite thing. And so they're gonna go, oh yes, you want to join in? Here, come. I've got extra stuff over here for you to start off with. I'll teach you everything I know. It's it's that simple.
Okay, well, that sounds like a good advice for anybody starting out in anything. Find people who are already doing it, and hopefully they will share with you. So do you have, before we go, do you have any last thoughts, final words you'd like to say to the people out there?
Okay. Given that most of you are not familiar with the Viking Age,
Mhm.
no, they did not have horns on their helmet.
Oh, that's just getting back to me for that comment I made.
Oh, you made that one too?
But remember,
Everyone makes that comment. And it's
yeah,
just like,
I
no.
know.
Do you have any idea how impractical it would be to have horns on your helmet when you're
Yeah.
trying to fight?
Yeah.
Either it would knock your helmet off, or if you've got it strapped on, it would knock your head around.
Yeah.
A good way to die.
I think it's just because everybody saw that been referencing the operas where the, you know, Broomhilda or whatever with the
Yeah.
horns on her head kind of a thing. But you're right, you know, that there's a lot of misinformation there. And something like what you do, this reenactment, the whole bit, puts things in the proper perspective, I think, and educates people about this kind of thing. But yeah,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I have to say this has been really delightful. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure other people watching this when it goes up will learn a lot too. I find the whole reenactment fascinating, and your creations are definitely very creative and very enticing. They make, I want to know more about this weaving, card weaving, and check it out, because it looks like a lot of fun to do for one thing, and final pieces look very, very good. So thank you, Thea, for doing this interview with me. And just stay on the line here for a moment when I finish the recording. Yes, thank you so much for agreeing to do an interview. I found this
My
fascinating,
pleasure.
and I hope you have a great week coming up, and all the best in all your reenactments and your creative endeavors. So
Thank you.
we will talk to you later.